numerous video games that are widely remembered for pioneering certain systems and mechanics. For example, Mortal Kombat was the first game to feature a hidden character, and Wolfenstein 3D essentially created the first-person shooter. Sadly, there are just as many products that are equally revolutionary, yet rarely get the recognition they deserve for being so groundbreaking. I'm Sai for WhatCulture.com, and these are 9 pioneering video games everyone forgets. Number 9. Colossal Cave Adventure. Spearheaded by eminent computer developer William Crowther in 1976, text-based adventure program Colossal Cave Adventure was highly influential for multiple reasons. For one thing, its setting and style paved the way for a myriad of other creations over the next few years alone, including Zork, Adventureland, and Adventure. What's arguably more notable and less often acknowledged is that Colossal Cave Adventure included a cheat code way before Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Doom, and Grand Theft Auto turned the trick into a staple of the medium. It even predates legendary Konami code by roughly a decade. Simply, players could input Zizzy XYZZY to skip a large portion of the game. Supposedly, Crowther made it for his sister, Betty Bloom, who was playtesting it and became irritated by Colossal Cave Adventure's leisurely pacing. There's also been speculation that the phrase was based on, or later became, a Crowther family password. In any case, it obviously laid the foundation for one of our most beloved video game attributes. Number 8. Reikai Doshi, Chinese Exorcist. With a name as colourfully unconventional as Reikai Doshi, Chinese Exorcist, aka The Last Apostle Puppet Show, you'd think that more people would recall this one. Aside from that superficial reason though, Magical Company's 1988 2D tongue-in-cheek arcade fighter should be continually celebrated as the very first claymation game, or game with digitised sprites. Indeed, this adorably weird brawler, centred around the player battling demons with their fists and feet, existed long before genre heavyweights such as Mortal Kombat, Clay Fighter, and Primal Rage. Of course, it also precedes NBA Jam, Alien vs Predator, Donkey Kong Country, and the Terminator 2 Judgment Day light gun shooter, to name a few non-fighting game classics. Reikai Doshi's visuals were so striking and inventive that it received coverage in the news. That landmark characteristic notwithstanding, the fact that you could face off against Genghis Khan makes it worth checking out as well. Number 7. Trespasser. Just like its film series counterpart, Jurassic Park video games are routinely hit or miss, to say the least. While 1998's Trespasser FPS, which acts as a canonical sequel to 97's The Lost World movie, generally falls into the latter category, its numerous novelties inspired many subsequent games. Chiefly, it helped pioneer ragdoll physics, a form of procedural animation that sees objects and characters flailing around in either realistic or hilariously cartoonish ways. Since then, the technique has been employed in both top-tier titles, including GTA, Skate, and the Uncharted franchises, and purposefully broken yet fun messes, including Goat Simulator and Octodad. Plus, its distinctive control scheme influenced Surgeon Simulator 2013, its outdoor environments predated those of Halo, Far Cry, Dinosaur Hunting and Crysis, and its use of voiceover storytelling likely influenced Doom 3. You could even say that its method of rendering faraway 3D objects in 2D until the player gets reasonably close to them was cutting edge at the time. Number 6. Operation Wingback. Known as Wingback Covert Operations in North America, this shooter debuted on the N64 at the end of the 90s before being ported to the PS2 in the year 2000. True, its plot wasn't especially unique. A secret agent, hilariously named Jean-Luc Cougar, penetrates a satellite command center controlled by a terrorist group called Crying Lions. What was original, however, was its third-person cover system. In fact, it was eventually adapted into major successes such as Gears of War and Kill Switch. In turn, those games spawned the gameplay of The Last of Us, Mass Effect, Red Faction, and Vanquish, so those mechanics have been passed down through multiple console generations, with Resident Evil 4 and Metal Gear Solid 2 being among its most overt and remarkable disciples in that respect. Without a doubt, Operation Wingback deserves to be remembered as the blueprint for the modern third-person shooter, plain and simple. Number 5. Courageous Perseus. Although it came out around the same time as the commonly commended Dragon Slayer, this 1984 action RPG Courageous Perseus easily outdid it in terms of ambition, scope, and complexity. Building upon modest predecessors, the game's advanced advanced mixture of hack-and-slash combat and more traditional RPG elements breathed new life into the subgenre. Without it, we wouldn't have had Alundra, the Ys Adventures, Times of Law, or a little-known game called The Legend of Zelda. On that note, and as specified by Giant Bomb, Courageous Perseus was the first fully scaled on-foot open-world game, with its outdoor freedoms going beyond then standard practice of dungeon-only exploration. It took place on an island too, and allowed players to go to other isles via raft transport. So not only did it predate the original Zelda and its whole sprawling adventure over lands gimmick, it also predated the Wind Waker and doing it overseas too. Number 4. Wabbits. Today, awesome female protagonists are everywhere, as they should be. None of them were the first of their kind though. In fact, not even Metroid Samus Aran, who debuted in 1986, holds that honour. So who does? Well, none other than Billy Sue, of course, the lead character of the 1982 Atari 2600 farming shoot-'em-up Wabbit. Tasked with getting rid of rabbits who are eating all of her crops, Sue spent her days throwing rotten eggs at the voracious invading varmint. Now, technically, Ms. Pac-Man preceded Billy Sue by about 8 months, but since she isn't human with her own identity, she doesn't really count. Thus, Vietnamese programmer Van May and developer-publisher Apollo warrant all the credit they can get for this groundbreaking creation. Number 3. Star Siege Tribes. Released for Windows in late 1998, this sci-fi FPS sequel to 94's MetalTech Earth Siege kickstarted the Tribes series, which lasted until 2012's Tribes Ascend. That's not its greatest contribution to gaming, however, as Starship Tribes also happened to offer a squad-based online multiplayer-only experience years before the style became profitable, adored, and broadly accessible. Set in the 40th century, it sees a few factions of humanity doing battle across roughly 40 levels of varying topography and climates, from futuristic buildings to snow-covered planets. Furthermore, class-based teams could compete in various modes, of course, including deathmatch, but also capture the flag and capture and hold. If those features and backdrops sound familiar, well, they should, as numerous successors from Call of Duty to Fortnite have used at least some of them over the ensuing decades. Number 2. Computer space. In their most basic and tenuous forms, video games have existed since the late 1940s, yet they didn't actually become viably marketable or desirable to the general public until the 1970s. Although Pong is often seen as initiating the arcade boom of the era, and rightly so, it's computer space that predates it by a year that earns the distinction as the first commercially sold coin-operated video game and the first commercially available video game. Made by Syzygy Engineering and published by Nutting Associates, it drew inspiration from 1962's Space War and revolved around a rocket ship, U, engaged in dogfights with adversarial flying saucers in an understandably simplistic cosmic lunarscape. Also, there's a set time limit to each round, with the main objective being to land more hits than your enemies. Directly or indirectly, Cosmic Space spawned several IPs, for example Asteroids and Space Invaders, not to mention every arcade video game that came after it. That's doubly true because its eye-catchingly curvy fiberglass cabinet set a standard for how to draw a crowd. And number 1, Alien Resurrection. As with Jurassic Park, the Alien franchise has had its fair share of cherished and chastised movies and video games. Like its 97 cinematic counterpart, 2000's PlayStation exclusive Alien Resurrection fell somewhere in the middle upon release. Developed by Argonaut Games and published by Fox Interactive, the FPS followed the plot of the film, with a cloned Lieutenant Ellen Ripley and a bunch of mercenaries fighting xenomorphs. Overall, it's not a very memorable experience, however its far-sighted incorporation of the DualShock's analog sticks certainly merits esteem all these years later. After all, its twin-stick control scheme, in which you use the left stick to move and the right stick to turn and aim, arrived a year before Halo Combat Evolved popularised it. By association then, Alien Resurrection of all things implicitly paved the way for just about every FPS to follow. And that's the list. Let us know what you thought of this video down in the comments below, and which of these pioneering video games have you played, and of course any that we might have missed. Make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Head over to whatculture.com for more content every day. I've been Cy for WhatCulture, and have a good week.